Harriet Tubman. Bye-bye to new. You bye-bye to new. Tupac. Bye-bye to new.
Ida B. Wells.
You bye-bye to new.
Sojourner Truth.
Bye-bye to new.
Biggie Smalls.
Biggie Smalls. Bye-bye to new. Calling forth all our ancestors.
Nina Simone.
Nina Simone.
Bill Cosby. Roxy Brown.
Roxy Brown still alive. He's still alive. Only the ones who's still alive. No, the ones who've gone on. The ones who've gone on. We're calling forth the spirit. We're invoking the ancestors. Ozzy Davis. Bye-bye to them. Wow. All right. They're all here now. They're all here. Let's invoke them. We've invoked them. We made certain that they're here. That when they walk around and feel the spirit of them. Where the drummers at?
Better put Curtis Mayfield in there.
Curtis Mayfield. Bye-bye to them.
Isaac Hayes.
Here you go. Isaac Hayes. Bye-bye to them. Right. I say, wow, what am I? I say.
Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye.
Oh, yes.
Marvin Gaye.
Right.
Let's get it on. All right, thank you very, very much. We are the African International Merchants Agency, in that we are a Buy Black campaign. In other words, from the womb to the tomb, we make certain that we buy from one another. Not because we're black, but because we have to advance ourselves from one generation to the next generation, from one generation to the next generation. We come from an unbroken line, coming from Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, Carlos Stokes. Carlos Stokes was the ideological son of Marcus Messiah Garvey. He started the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement, in which over 2,000 legionnaires from the Marcus Garvey Army came and was in Harlem, all during the 50s and the 60s. Malcolm X used to come by Carlos Cook's ladder, because we had a ladder we stand on, we can street speak. Carlos Cook's was mysteriously murdered. Malcolm X was mysteriously murdered. But their name lives on, their spirit lives on. Carlos Cook's coined the phrase, buy black. Because at that time, during the early 60s, there was an influx of black people beginning to start looking at integration, which was one of the worst things that could ever happen to us. We began to lose our mom and pop stores. Carlos Cook said it was in Harlem. He said, well, let's get these people together, and they had a lead pipe. And they said, if we catch you coming out of one of these stores, we're going to take you around and give you a lead pipe brigade. He is fantastic. What time is it now? Pastor, I was going to have people they have the shop and things. We have different organizations that we invited in order to come and tell what's happening, because there's different fingers dealing with the African nationalist movement. So we wanted to have people come that belong to different nationalist organizations to come to give you a view of what's really happening out there, so to speak, on the streets. So we also want to make sure that you come together, get to know one another, and shop with our merchants. Okay? Even if you give each one of the merchants $1, that'll make certain that you're buying black. You know, it's old. You look at something, it's oh God, I can't buy it because I don't like it. It's not. That's not about it. We are in such a dire straits and dire needs of monies coming together and sharing. We have to turn over 10 times. We don't even turn over twice the monies in our community. Our monies goes out, 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 and nothing comes in. That's because we're not buying black, we're not looking at black businesses that are striving to help make certain that we're coming together as a people.
Or African.
So that's the reason why when we give a function, we make certain that at least you go to the person in business, say thank you for being in business. Here's $1. I can't afford whatever you have there, whatever, but just here's $1. All right. So that'll make them feel a little bit better about coming together, and that'll make you feel a little bit better for buying somebody. Because I'm a veteran vendor. I've been doing this since '75, and I always tell our people, no matter where we are, give $1 to a black man. Spend $1 with a black man. So you spend $1 with the Jews, you spend $1 with the Italians, you spend $1 with the Koreans, you spend $1 with everybody that don't even look like you. It has no interest, none of your interests in mind. They're taking that money right straight back to Israel, straight back to Czechoslovakia, straight back to, forget about Arabia. I mean, these desert Arabs are cleaning up on us, boy. You know, and every time you look around, they're calling you brother, 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 please come in, brother, brother, please come in. You know, sister, please come in, but come to the back too.
Right.
We're at war, folks.
Yes, right.
We're at war with our minds.
Psychological.
We're at war with our pockets. All right? So we've got to come together and make sure we go and do it. We have a beautiful lineup tonight. The pastor of this beautiful religious edifice, Brooklyn Christian Center, is a beautiful man from Jamaica. His name is the Reverend Dennis Dillon. Reverend Dennis Dillon is an economist. But he's not just an economist. He's an economist. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, you're way back there. I mean, I don't need no mic.
Okay.
All I need is one mic, one mic, one mic. Is the food getting warm? It's almost ready. Lord, I'll tell you, boy. My wife, Yah Santua, who's the founder of this organization, the African International Merchants Agency. You know, the African woman controls the marketplace. You know that, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
The African woman controls the marketplace. Came from all the way from Africa Over to here too, she controls the marketplace, okay? And the house, everything, okay? So, in 1994, there was about 1,000 of us, street merchants, on 125th Street. About 1,000 of us. Do you know that?
Yes, yes.
On 125th Street. Yah Sandoval, she was the chief of staff of all 1,000 of us. The Honorable Morris Powell, he was the president of the African Nationalist Pioneer Movement and the 125th Street Vendors Association. When Giuliani came in, when Giuliani came in to power, when Adolf Giuliani came into power, he made certain that there was an international conspiracy. I'm telling you how powerful we are. These people who have been looking at us and studying our spending habits all over the world, they know where to go. When they get off that ship or the plane or whatever, they go straight to the black community, set up shop, and start taking money from our pockets. And we just, oh, how you doing? Come in. We give you, how much money you want? How much money you want? The African Nationalist Pioneer Movement, African Nationalist Merchants Agency, we're not into that. All right, we're into making certain our people come together as business people. They took us off 125th Street, all 1,000 of us. It took 1,000 troopers in storm gear, set up all those barricades all along 125th Street to take us off. And they had guns. What, I mean, all we had was our table. That's all we had. We didn't have no sawed-off shotguns and AK-47s, but they had a tank on the East River. They had tanks over on the other side of the West Side Highway. We're at war, folks.
Yes, we are.
We are at war. And we've got to know it. We've got to know it. Every single dollar that we have is a bullet. Every single dollar we have is a bullet. We've got to make certain that we know how to aim. We know how to aim that doggone bullet. We know how to aim that dollar. We know how to turn that Georgie Porgy and make him black. And he was working for the black man Henson anyway. And you know, the first black man was the president of the United States, you know that.
Yes.
John Hanson. 7 of us.
Yes.
And we had 7, 9 more.
So we've been running this thing. We've been running this thing since we got it. We were already here. We were already here. Christopher Columbus or whatever. Columbo or whatever. Yeah. He saw us. We guided him over here. We saw him. We showed him how to the Nita, the Sinton, the Santa Maria. It was 3 ships. No, it was over 3,000. It was an armada. It was over 3,000. Enough talking. I saw him already. Yeah. Yeah, I saw him. He said, do what you got, and he'll come. All right? Getting mixed messages over here. So, I thought we had more drummers than that. You can handle it. We would like for you to go and shop with the merchants, grab a bite to eat, hobnob with one another, and we're going to be bringing on one of the most dynamic economists that we have on the face of the earth. And please, please buy his book. What's the name of the book? that Pastor Dennis has?
Economic state of Black New York.
The economic state of Black New York. We've been knowing Pastor Dennis for over 20 years, and his insight into his insight into our economy and where we should take our dollars is phenomenal.
Yes.
And he does it in such a manner where it becomes spiritual and holy.
We also have the buttons.
We also have buttons. We also have buttons, and it deals with freedom. So you know what that means. It's talking about freedom coming from the dollar onto reality. So please, after we get through with our merchants, hobnobbing, yes ma'am.
Oh, brother, can you
Yes sir.
elaborate more?
I can't see with my glasses.
Okay, can you elaborate more when you talk about the Armada with a Chris Columbus, that was always on the
Oh,
You know,
history.
you got the 3,000 shit, brother, you gotta bring
History.
me
Dr.
up-
Jeffrey
on
will
that,
be
brother.
coming here later on. He'll tell you
That's
all
what's
about
up, mate.
Christopher, that liar,
You know,
that
you
traitor.
about that.
He'll tell you all about Christopher Columbus.
Okay.
On the black side. On the black side.
3,000 ships, okay.
Or on the black side, all right? Because he was commissioned. He was commissioned by us anyway.
Yeah,
All right.
right after the wars stood out, that's when they took over. 3 days later, started
Hey,
sending them ships out.
that's right. That's right.
3 days later.
3 days later. That's right,
And
bro.
the wars out, that's when white folks got into our gates.
Hey,
You know what I'm saying?
we were in control of the 7 seas, man.
Yeah, man, hell yeah, but
All right.
more.
So, let the drums begin, and everybody get to know one another. All right? Black Pepper. I go. Amen. I go. Amen. I go. Amen. Whew. I'm sure glad y'all getting to know one another. That's right, you got to get to know someone over some soul food. Ain't nothing like having some soul food to get to know one another. We have a brother that's in the community. He's been in the community for several decades. He comes with the original Black Panther Party. He's doing an awesome job with the victims of Hurricane Sandy. He's feeding them. We would definitely like to bring a couple of minutes and he'll explain about what his organization does. This is a speak out, and his name is Chef. Brother Chef. Panther Chef. Panther Chef.
Peace. Peace. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
And death to the fascist pigs.
Death to the fascist pigs.
My name is I'm known as Brother Shep. Said I was in the original Black Panther Party right here in New York State, operating primarily out of Harlem in the Bronx. When the party ended, I became a child care worker, which I did for the last 35, almost 40 years, working with adolescent youth, with adjudicated youth, young children. So we passed that legacy on, whatever we did when the party officially ended in 1980. We continue to do the work at all different levels. What Barbara was talking about is a program we call the People's Survival Program, which again carries on the legacy of the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords Party here in New York, where we had free medical clinics, we had free breakfast programs for children. Most of those breakfast programs were actually done in churches like this one that we're in today. We had free bus and prison programs. We had just a month. Matter of fact, we just did a program this past Tuesday at Montefiore Medical Center, where we told people what our medical programs were about. You know, we were the first ones to deal with sickle cell. Okay, doing those testing. We dealt with lead poisoning testing, tuberculosis. Some people might remember that the Young Lords and Panthers actually commandeered a couple of TB trucks and went to our hood to do that tuberculosis testing when the hospitals didn't want to come into the hood. So we got some doctors aligned with us and we did it ourselves. Okay? And it's all about self. It's about us taking care of ourselves, working for ourselves, doing for ourselves. We don't need to ask anybody for anything because we can do all of that ourselves. Okay? Brother Bob, I mentioned the free food that we do. We give out hot meals. Okay, we do it in Harlem once a month. We've hit all the areas that were ignored, you know, what was it, Far Rockaway, Coney Island, or Red Hook. We were there, giving out free clothes, free supplies, all those things that our people need, and everything came from us. Okay, from us. We did it. And we want everyone to take upon themselves to do the same thing because we can do that. We did it back in the 60s and 70s, we can do it now, and we need to do it now. Because it's getting serious, brothers and sisters, very serious.
That's right.
Oh, when you're in Harlem, go to Jacob's Restaurant. Brother doesn't want people to tell you that he does it, but he provides a lot of the food that we give to the people. All right, so go to Jacob's, okay? We've got 2 locations. I'll get that to you. Don't see me over on the side. But I want to get to the point. I'm not going to talk too much longer. I want to tell you about 2 events that are coming up. And I want you to see me at the table. If not, if you don't have time, make sure you get one of these flyers. Look for Brother Shep on here. That's my email and a contact number. If you email me, okay, I'll put you in our communication system. So you find out all the events that we're doing throughout the city and beyond. In fact, one of my partners is in Detroit right now because they started a people survival program in Detroit. He's out there right now, Brother Shaka Shakur. So, I mean, we continuously spreading this back around. We're about to start one in Los Angeles, in Miami, all over. Our people are coming together to serve ourselves and deal with ourselves. And that's what it's about, yo, because if we depend on your enemy to do it for you, you got that right. Okay? We have to love and care for each other. This event here, make sure you get a flyer. There's some in the back. Did you have some of those over here? Okay. This is our history. This is part of what we do in the PSP also, which is acronym for People Survival Program. This is 11th Annual Committed Masters in the Martial Arts. It's not just about martial arts, it's about our history. Because martial arts, you see on the back of the flyer, you have some hieroglyphics here and some pictures from the temples where you see the brothers doing katas. This is over 3,000 years ago. We initiated martial arts on this planet and spread it throughout the world. So it's going to be a great PowerPoint presentation to show you that history. We're going to have exhibition, and we're going to honor some of our ancestors and some of our masters that are still amongst us. Bob, I forgot to call our brother Akil Ajunde. People don't know Akil was one of the Attica brothers. During the rebellion, he was head of security. And he made sure that until they did the invasion, Rockefeller and his folks, he made sure the hostages were protected. Okay, Akil was almost killed along with a lot of others that did die that day. But we're going to honor him because he started martial arts schools. We're going to honor our brother Shango, who was in the Black Liberation Army. He was a master. Matter of fact, a lot of people said that he was the closest thing to Bruce Lee. Okay, he trained people in prison. And we're going to honor them. There's going to be exhibitions. There's going to be a display of martial arts history, weapons, so forth. But more importantly, it supports the People's Survival Program. So you will learn your history, and you'll also support an institution in our community. Last thing I'm going to announce is on Malcolm X Commemoration Day. Anybody know what day that is?
May 19th.
It's his birthday. Malcolm X Commemoration Day. Day he was assassinated. Anybody?
February 21st.
February 21st. Remember that date. It's important that we remember all those dates. Okay, we want to make sure that that day is never forgotten. So we're working with what used to be called the BrotherRonn, which is now the Malcolm X, Betty Shabazz Center. Okay, Cultural Center. We're working with them to, for the first time, what we're going to do is on the 21st, which is Thursday, at 3 p.m. Excuse me, 2 p.m. From 3 p.m. from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. We're going to do a libation drumming ceremony there for Brother Malcolm, and we're also going to go step by step in real time, from the time that he was shot to the time that he was supposedly pronounced dead at the hospital, which was right across the street. You know, Presbyterian was right across the street. So you're going to see how long it took for Brother Malcolm to be taken to the hospital, and all the things that went around about that whole, which was really set up by the government. But we're going to talk about those things, and then that evening at the National Black Theater, and again, it's important that you get, you know, contact me so I can get you information. I don't have flyers for that for the 21st, but hopefully films. We're going to show autobiography of Malcolm X, one that Gil Noble did. Okay, and then we're going to show a film of Brother Khalid Abdul Muhammad that none of you have seen. Okay, we found it in the archives. Right. It was between the time that he left the nation and before the new Black Panther Party. It's an interview about his life story with him in his own words. All right, so come out, see that film, and that's going to be one of the only opportunities you have to see that, because we're not going to mass produce it all over the place. We want to use it as an organizing tool. There'll be a discussion, a Q&A after that. We've invited people from the OAU that work with Malcolm. Okay, there'll be also when we do the event at the center. So it's going to be a day that we're going to look at both of these heroes. to our community on Malcolm X Commemoration Day. So last but not least, I want to thank everyone who bought one of these buttons that help support the people's survival programs that we do. We deal with our political prisoners, of course. There are close to 60 Panthers still in prison. Most of them have been forgotten about. And we want to make sure that they know that we didn't forget about them. So we send them cards, we send them letters, we do visits. We want the community to get involved in that. Because we can't forget the sacrifices that they made for our freedom. Okay? So see me over here, and if you have any questions, you can talk to me then. Peace.
Black power. Black power. All power to the people. Free the land. Oh, that reminds me. We're in the process of developing our farm project. Thank you. And how many of you have people are from the South? Families from the South? Lord, look at all y'all.
We're all from the South. South of Canada.
Okay. We're starting a farm to market project in which we're going to be starting the farm cooperative. So y'all gotta keep your ear to the drum. We're going to be calling you up because we have access to a nation. We have access to a nation of black farmers that are willing and able to feed us wholesome food, not from the Korean or the Italian or the Arab. All right. So just if you like what you ate tonight, you can have that all the time. You don't have to go down to with other people. But all we have to do is pool our monies together.
Amen.
All right, and we'll bring the food up from down south and feed y'all.
Amen.
Is that cool?
That's cool.
All right. Okay. So just keep your ear to the drum, and when we're ready, because harvest time comes sometime about at the end of April. Okay. So get your monies together, and we're going to be instituting food stamps too. So we get that machine and stuff. Okay? So that's that. Thank you, drummers. Thank you, drummers. Thank you, drummers. We do it without the drum. We do it without the African drum. Thank you very, very much. Pastor? After the pastor speaks? Okay, after the pastor gives the economic state of the address. Is Pastor Dennis, you ready, Minister Johnny? Pastor Dillon has a unique economic ministry. There's another way in which the Bible is being interpreted. You have to really hear this man. This man is phenomenal when it comes to just pulling it out and laying it down as to the economic solvency of who we are as a people and where we have to go with our monies and where we can take it. It's a whole economic ministry which brought us together, my wife and I, to really enjoy and love this brother for over 20-something years. He has built this edifice from practically nothing with cars and stuff like that. It just used to be a garage, and now it's a holy temple and a studio, television studio, and a supper club. I mean, and the beat goes on with tentacles all down into Jamaica and the Caribbean, straight on over to the mainland. All right? So, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a beautiful ride, y'all. Pastor Dennis Dillon, are you ready? Whoa, let's stand to your feet and greet the pastor of this house. Reverend Pastor Dennis Dillon, the economic guru.
Thank you, Brother Oba. Come on, let's put our hands together for Brother Oba. How's everybody doing? Come on, I know y'all are doing better than that. How's everybody doing? Come on, put your hands together if you're doing good. All right, here comes my leader, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Let's put our hands together for Dr. Leonard Jeffries as he comes. All right, I am grateful to be here. I am grateful to all of you for, listen, this is your home. You're welcome to be here anytime you like. It is about us flowing together. Sometimes we get bogged down with our differences in theology and our differences in belief, but the one thing I know is that we are all one African people. And that's the most important thing. I got to remind folks that all people are African people. I don't care if you're Caucasian or you're Indian, if you're Arab, it doesn't matter, we're all African people, because I'm a firm believer that when we go back to the original and we go back to creation, you're always going to go back to people of color, to Africa. Even those of us who believe the Bible, if you really want to believe the Bible and put the Bible to work, the Bible talks about the fact that in creation, everything was centered and wrapped around, guess where, Ethiopia. Amen, somebody. So you can't run from that. I say this all the time, that if God, for those of us who believe again in the Bible and in the scriptures, if God created man from the dust of the earth, I'm yet to see any rich earth that is not black or brown or red or of some kind of color. Y'all working with me? So we're grateful to be here. We're grateful to really share with all that Brother Oba and the African International Merchant doing and are trying to do and have been working on for many years. And for as long as I have worked with Dr. Oba, Sister Ya Asantewa, I'm grateful for their work and for all that they do and all that they continue to do. Let me just quickly share a couple of things with us, and that is first and foremost that we are celebrating 150 years since the Emancipation Proclamation. And we recognize that Abraham Lincoln did not really free us, but we can't ignore the fact that the Emancipation Proclamation signed January 1st, 1863 was a step in the right direction to really help to bring about our freedom, and all the struggles of all the black men and women, the slaves and the freed slaves, as well as all of the other folks. You know, sometimes we have a tendency to overlook the fact that other folks other than black folks have played a role in our struggle and in our journey for freedom. But here we are 150 years later, and the fact of the matter is that we are not free yet. How many know that there's still a lot of work to do for us to get to that place where we are fully free, we are truly free, and we can walk in the abundance and the fullness of our freedom? I make the point time and time again that we are truly free when we have full control of our resources. When we own the banks in our own neighborhood in which we are depositing some $120 billion a year in New York alone, then we can begin to say that we are free. When we walk over to the supermarket and we're shopping in our own stores, produce that came from our own farms, then we can begin to say that we are free. When our communities are not overrun by everybody else coming in and doing businesses and owning all the businesses in our neighborhood, and we relegate ourselves to the role of being everybody's consumers, and we begin to be our own merchants and allow the dollars to rotate in our own communities at our own will, then we can truly say that we are free. The amazing thing is that there's a word that is called freedom. Everybody say freedom. Come on, say it like you really mean it. Say freedom. And freedom, as I understand it, if you were to break the word down and go back to the root, the dome word, the second part, suggests dominion. And the first part, free, really suggests self. So freedom is really self-dominion. And until we get to the place where we truly have dominion over self, we get up when we want and do as we like, then we're really not free, because we don't have freedom or self-dominion. So those who control the resources, because essentially dominion have to do with resource and control. So in the end, the ones with the resources are ultimately the ones who control the movement of the people within that domain. We got to get to the place where we have dominion over our own resources. Even the Bible says, I am creating you and I am giving you dominion over all the resources. And it is time for black folks in America to journey to our place of dominion, where we can truly say that we have our own domain. So it's a journey that we're on, and I want to encourage everyone to just be a part of this. Let me encourage you all to come on back out on Wednesday night. United African Movement will be here under the leadership of the dynamic and the awesome Brother Alton Maddox. Wednesday night, come on out. I encourage all of you to make your way out right here on Wednesday night. Come on out on Wednesday night. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., we're going to be in Harlem on 129th Street and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard at Salem United Methodist Church. And I want everybody again to come on out and be a part of that experience. We are on this journey, this revival movement, to really bring about another layer of freedom for our community. The amazing thing, when we go back to 50 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, that takes us to 1913, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, and others really organized the best they could around movement activities, and the end result in the things that they do and thought to do was to really bring relief after 50 years, and their theme was things are getting harder. You know, I'm looking at where we are today, and I'm concerned as to whether or not between now and then we can say anything different than they did 100 years ago, other than things are getting harder. But then, 50 years after that, 1963, we had the March on Washington, and in that, Dr. Martin Luther King says, I have a dream. And we're looking now 50 years after that, now 150 years, and do we still have a dream? And what has happened to the dream? And has the dream for black folks in America been realized, or has that dream really become a nightmare? There are some stuff that we must do differently, and there's a journey that we certainly need to be on, and I want to just talk for a few minutes about that. I'm going to just go straight to the Economic State of Black New York report. We put this out every year. I believe that every serious, conscientious black person in America needs to have a copy of this book. You need to read it, you need to review it, you need to study it, you need to understand the numbers, because I'm a big believer that when we have the facts and the information in front of us, then we can have better clarity about our journey. Don't want to get you stuck with the problem, because how many know that it is easy to talk about what's wrong? You know, we all recognize that there's a problem. There's some issues and some challenges that we must deal with. The more important thing for me, however, is what is it that we must now begin to do to really bring about some solution. So as we're talking, we are not spending our entire time and life analyzing the problem to the point where we create an analysis of paralysis, but we are looking at our way forward so that some solutions are being inculcated and we can begin a new journey. How many understand that this is the time for a new journey? I believe that 150 years is long enough for black folks to be in the same place of struggle. We've made a lot of progress over the years. We've changed our economic circumstances, drastically. We're not as poor as folks want us to be. In fact, we're not as poor as we think we are. Because we've gone from a place where we were property of everybody else 150 years ago to being in a place now where black folks in America are responsible for $1.2 trillion in buying power in America. Whoa. You look at a population of about 54 million black folks in America, and that 54 million black folks are responsible for some $1.2 trillion in buying power. I'm going to explain that to you because I need you to understand the impact and what it means to represent those kind of dollars. If you were to take the 20 smallest states in the United States of America, and you combine the total, buying power of all those states. Take Vermont with its buying power of $25 billion and add Wyoming with its buying power of $26 billion and add Alaska with $31 billion and North and South Dakota with some $66 billion combined. Delaware and Montana, Washington, D.C., Rhode Island, Maine, Idaho, New Hampshire, West Virginia, Hawaii, New Mexico, Nebraska, Utah, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Nevada. And you combine the total buying power of all those 20 states, and the black buying power in America is more. Whoa! I need you to understand the weight of that power. If you were to take the population of all those states and combine them, you're going to find that black folks, with its 44 million people in America, is far more economically potent than the total population of all of those states combined. We've got some power, you all. When we say black power, we got to know that that black power is really green. It is about time for black people in America to understand that black power is not so much in the color of our skin, but it's the money in our pocket and the money in our bank accounts. We are no longer a poor people. Yes, we were poor, but I think we've allowed this stuff to be so deeply ingrained in our psyche that way after we got rich, Dr. Jeffries, we're still thinking we're poor, and other folks conveniently tell us that we are poor, because if we tell them that they are poor long enough, they will remain in a mentally poor state, even though their pocketbook and their bank accounts are telling them that they're not poor.
That's right. Say it, son. That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. That's right.
This is amazing, because there's only 4 countries in all of Europe, the nation that has exploited our people and exploited the lands of our evolution and the land of our birth and the birth of our forefathers. But only 4 countries in all of Europe have a buying power that is larger than that of black people in America.
All right.
Whoa.
Well, the sad reality is this. If you were to take all of the countries in Africa and combine their gross domestic product all across the board, you will find that black people in America with $1.2 trillion in buying power have a buying power that's about half that of the entire continent of Africa. Egypt, South Africa, Morocco, and all these other countries included. At what point are we going to grow to the place in our psychological framework and in our experience where we recognize that we are a people of tremendous power? You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that I really love. It's the part of the Bible that most times white folks don't want black folks to read. They don't want us to get to our liberation even in the Bibles. Whether it's the Quran or the Talmud or the Bible. They don't want us to get to our freedom in all those books. By the way, can I tell you all something? I gotta tell you all this. None of those books have any evolution from the land of Europe. All of those books grow out of the African culture and the African experience. All of the history of the Quran and the Talmud and the Bible comes from other lands. Stop letting folks tell you that the Bible is the white man's book, because the fact of the matter is the white man barely finds himself until we get to New Testament scriptures. And even then, there's barely references and mention of his existence. This is real, y'all. You know, because I know y'all probably don't want to hear this stuff, but it's real nonetheless. The disciples got to the place in their experience where somehow they get a call from God to take the gospel to the Gentiles. You know, Peter turned around and said, God, you've taught us that we should not partake of anything that is common or unclean. So here goes Peter thinking that white folks were common or unclean, and then we turn around years later and try to make Peter white when he was the very one that says, God, we can't go to those white folks because you told us that they were unclean. There's a lot of re-educating that has to take place amongst our people. Because when we begin to understand all of this and we understand the depth of our own journey, we'll begin to think differently. We'll begin to guide our young people in new direction. But we are a powerful people. And this is not just in words. This is in our evolution and in our experience. And we got to begin to apply these principles to our lives. I want to just talk about black businesses for a few minutes. Follow me, folks. And make sure you get the report after. I know you don't have it now, so you can't follow the pages with me. But on page 11, you know, there's, information about black businesses in America, and I want to just say this to us. I want to make this very key, this very critical, this very important point to us, and that is simply this: that in all that we do as a people in America, the one thing that we got to go back to when we understand the principles of our culture, we got to go back to really making commerce a more critical part of our journey. I have said this so many times before, I'll say to us again: we will never solve black people's problem in America through social programs. We won't solve it through the journey to solve health care and education and social service and foster care and youth and children and violence. We will never solve the problems that we face in America until we get to the place where we address the whole question of our economic circumstances.
That's right, that's right.
We have to teach our children. We must inculcate what I call a culture of commerce amongst ourselves and amongst our people. A culture of commerce. For too long, what we've had is a commerce of culture. And a commerce of culture tells us, for the most part, that we sell culture to our people, as opposed to beginning to get to the place where commerce becomes our culture. So we think it, we breathe it, and then we begin to live it, and it becomes a part of our psyche and a part of our mindset. Every other race of people are serious about business development, serious about their financial growth, serious about owning their own community. We are, for too long, the ones who sit back and allow everybody to own everything around us, being comfortable as consumers, as opposed to the journey to become merchants, as we develop a culture of commerce, as opposed to purely just a commerce of culture. To do that, this thing got to get in our bones. Ownership got to get in our bones. We got to stop living in places that we don't own. We got to become more serious about being landlords and not just tenants. We got to get serious about being merchants and not just consumers. And when we are serious, watch this, about being merchants and not just consumers, when we're serious about that, then we will be serious. Our children will be serious about being the law enforcers and not the criminal, because they will have to enforce the protection of your commerce because you've established it. These dynamics are real. They happen just like that. So if you look in your neighborhood and wonder why in our community there's a higher incidence of criminality, it is because our young people have lost their direction. We've not inculcated within the fabric of their mind a culture of commerce. So they are thinking about the protection of economics, and in thinking about the protection of economics, they will begin to put all the elements in place to bring it about. It is amazing, because Brooklyn, everybody say Brooklyn. Brooklyn. We're in Brooklyn. Brooklyn has the third largest number of black-owned businesses of any county in America. Followed only by Cooks County in Illinois and Los Angeles County in California. But despite the fact that blacks have that level of economic power and businesses right here in Brooklyn, the average black-owned business in Brooklyn only grows $52,000 a year in revenue, compared to the average business in New York that grows, listen to this, $10 million. We got to begin to look at the journey that we need to be on. Average business in New York grows $10 million. Average black-owned business in Brooklyn grows $52,000 $60,000. The average black-owned business in the state of New York grows only $63,000. I said the same thing. Wow, these numbers are mind-boggling. But it tells us that we need to be on a journey for redemption, a journey to change. We start looking at where is it that black folks are shopping. And that's a part of our problem. We suffer from a problem I coined many years ago as CSD, compulsive spending disorder. It sounds funny, but it is true. We outspend just about every other race of people in America. We outspend every other race of people in America. We outspend every other group of people in America. We have, in no time, it's in the report. We've made Macy's the top grossing, department store in America. And they are #1 for black shoppers in New York City. We have made Payless and all these major corporations, DSW, we have made these companies successful on our own backs with our own resources. And in the end, we struggle to survive while we are busy empowering every other people. And let me tell you something, God will never be satisfied or happy with a people who sit back. I don't care how much church, how much mass, how much worship, how much activities you've got. At the end of the day, if you sit back and allow others to control the resources of your community, God is going to look at you and say, depart from me, I never knew you.
That's right.
We're too busy wearing our righteousness on our crown, wearing our righteousness on our sleeves, wearing our righteousness in our books, wearing our righteousness with our buttons and our consciousness. We're too busy wearing our righteousness every place else as opposed to putting it truly in our hearts, where at the end we are doing something to bring about the changes that will transform our lives and the lives of our children. In 2011, SBA did almost $1 billion in loans to businesses in the New York area. You want me to tell you how many of those loans went to black businesses? $9,865,000.
Why?
$9,865,000 out of almost $1 billion.
Why?
That is some less than 2% of all the SBA loans went to black businesses, and blacks represent some 18.7% of the population for the state of New York. When are we going to have our own wake-up call? Today. Let me just tell you one of the bit of facts, because I think this is important. The Empire State Development Corporation, a state agency, did that same year over $147 million in loans. And of the total loans issued by the Empire State Development Corporation, only 655,000, less than 1 million, went to black-owned businesses. That's less than 1/2 of 1% went to black-owned businesses. This is the state agency for which we've had fights and battles about blacks being the president of the Senate. This is the state agency from which you've got blacks that are, who have been in key leadership in both the Senate and the Assembly. This is the same agency for which we've had a black who at the time was the governor of the state of New York. This is the same agency for which we've had a black who was controller of the state of New York. May I make a suggestion to us? Can I really make a very key critical point to y'all? We can beat up on our elected officials as much as we want. The fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, to whom you give your money is to whom you give your power. And we have relegated our power to everybody but us. So it doesn't matter how many black elected officials you've got, whether they are president of the United States or governor of states or mayor of great cities, or they represent assemblies and senates across the United States of America. At the end of the day, we must understand that politics is the protection of economics. And if we lack the economics to protect our politics and our politicians, in the end mean absolutely nothing, and they can do nothing for us. I'm not trying to excuse them. I'm not trying to create an excuse for them. What I can't afford to do is to let you off the hook. Because we got to understand that the same way we had the power to elect them, we've got the power to ensure that they're serving our interests. And the best way for them to serve our interests is to make sure that we put in place the economic infrastructure, then put them in politics and say, now protect our economics, because at that point we will have the economics to protect. It is a new page. It's a new page. We got to flip a new page. I want to just share 3 other pieces of information with you, because I know everybody's here to hear our Dr. Jeffries, and to hear some of what he has to say too before having to go. But let me just say this, folks. Much of the problems that we see result in the problem of gentrification. Page 26 of the report talks about gentrification. I remember years ago sounding the alarm that things are changing in Brooklyn. I wrote a whole couple of editorials and chapters discussing the plight in Harlem. Those who've been up in Harlem with me know what we're talking about, from the poor Freddies and the street vendors on 125th Street. We've been up there, we've battled this back and forth. You know, the amazing thing about us is that we do a good job reacting. We don't do quite a great job orchestrating. I dare there to be some orchestrators here so that we don't have to react. You know, I talk about the fact that when we proact, you know, we don't need to react. When we don't proact, then we have no choice but to react. We have to learn how to act in advance. Because when you act in advance, and I watch how the other folks operate, they operate years in advance. They're planning. And so I remember this whole, you know, organization, committee, and system all over Brooklyn, all over Harlem, as they were planning all of this stuff, and we all sat and watched all of this happen right around us. We watched our old ladies lose their homes, you know, in Fort Greene and Clinton Hill and Sugar Hill, Harlem. We've watched our old ladies and men lose their property for others coming in for little and nothing. And we have not orchestrated the plan to ensure that this dormant power that we've got is resurrected, and we're bringing it to life, and we're truly creating the change and making the difference that need to happen. So the end result of us not proacting is this. We have seen a 720% white migration in Fort Greene over the past 10 years. a 634% increase in the white population in Bedford-Stuyvesant over the past 10 years. We've seen a 404% increase in the white population in Harlem over the past 10 years. 185% white population increase in Crown Heights and Prospect Heights. And we're continuing to see the increase everywhere.
That's right.
And with that increase in the white population coming in, there is a black flight.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
In our own neighborhoods.
That's right.
I got bothered. One brother came to me the other day, about 5 or 6 years ago, had a nice house in Brooklyn. And he said, Pastor, man, you got to come to my house in Pennsylvania. I bought this nice house in Pennsylvania, swimming pool in the backyard, and you know, I've got about 14 rooms and all of that stuff. And my poor brother did not know that a little house falling down in Brooklyn, barely with a backyard, have a greater value than a sprawling house somewhere down in Strasburg, Pennsylvania. We've allowed folks to sell that stuff to us. And so we're losing all this valuable real estate. These houses now, we leave them, sold them for $300,000-400,000, thought we were doing something and making some money. Now they've bought them and they're selling them for $1.2 million. And your big mansion that you bought in Strasburg and every place else have either barely retained its $350,000 value or it has depreciated. It is because we're missing out on some critical and some essential stuff. Let me touch upon education very quickly. Page 27. And again, you got to get the report. In the New York City Department of Education system, there's 1,042,000 or so students.
That's right. That's right.
It's a pretty large system. It's the largest school system in America.
That's right.
There's no question about that.
That's right. That's right.
If you look at the population within the school system, you will find that 47% are black and 26% are Hispanic. That's a total of 73% black and Latinos.
That's right. Do the economics.
Despite almost 75% black and Latinos within the school system, I have looked at the 8 specialized high schools in New York. And I wanted to know, well, how many of these black and Latino children are actually going to these schools? And the numbers are mind-boggling. Because if you go to Bronx High School of Science, last year they only registered 26 blacks. Brooklyn Latin only registered 81 blacks. Brooklyn Tech, 141 blacks were registered. A total of 1,951 were registered. High School of Math and Science and Engineering, 14 blacks out of 228. Queens High School for the Performing Arts and Sciences at York College, 143 registered, 11 blacks. York College, y'all. York College, right in the heart of our neighborhood. York College I'm talking about. Okay, York College, 11 blacks out of 143. And Stuyvesant High School registered 937 and only 12 of them were black. In total, watch this, in total, of the 5,414 children that were registered to the specialized high school, how many did I say? 5,414. Only 293 were black. We represent 75% of the population in the Board of Education school system, yet in the specialized high schools, we are less than 3% of the total number of students that were registered. Now, I told y'all that I was going to talk about some issues. I told you that I was going to speak to some of the problems and some of the challenges that we're dealing with.
Okay, Mayor.
Because these issues are real. These problems are real. Can I just give you a little, one other bit of information here? NYPD stop and frisk data. In 2011, a record 684,700 people were stopped. 84% of them were black and Latinos. 84% of them were black and Latinos. Here goes the critical part of this data. Of the whites that were stopped, 2.7% of the whites that were stopped had contraband on them. Only 1.5% of the blacks who were stopped had contraband on them. That provides absolutely no justification for stopping and frisking at this level. Not when you're going to find more drugs, more guns on white folks than you will find on black folks. But we've sat back for too long, ladies and gentlemen. We have created this problem. I'm not suggesting that we've always had the power to solve the issues that we're dealing with, but I'm clearly suggesting now that we do. I'm saying that we got to now wake ourselves up, and there got to be a new awakening amongst our people. We're not living in the age that we previously lived. This is a new time. This calls for new strategy, for new direction, for us to begin to do new things. We got to get up, stop talking about the problems, and begin to put in place some solutions so we can solve the problems that are before us. And I'm going to give us some solutions. But before I do that, let me just say this to us quickly. We're not where we were 20 years ago. Black folks are by no means where we were 20 years ago. In some areas, we've made some progress. In other areas, we've not made that much progress. 20 years ago, there was one black billionaire in America. Today, and in the world today, there is some 13 black billionaires in the world. 20 years ago, the only black billionaire there was in America. Today, watch this, because I think it is so important for us to begin to pull this agenda, this black folks agenda. We got to pull this out of ourselves, pull this beyond America. And I know I'm talking to the right group, but we got to begin now to understand that because our circumstances are global, and because our problems are global, we got to begin to buy into a global solution. We have to begin to understand that the same way Europe saw the resources and the energy of Africa, that's why they went to Africa and exploit Africa the way they did in the first place. It is the same way we must harness our energy and resources and know that we can't just talk about Africa and going back to Africa. We got to begin to buy into the rich resources that's in Africa. God knows what he is doing, because when God created the world, he did not just put all the resources in Africa for a while. The resources are still there. We just have to know that it is time we get up and go back to Africa and begin to understand that we must harness the energy and the resources of our global community and stop sitting back while everybody exploit our resources. I need you to understand that it is no longer the white man. We can talk about the white man all we want, but now it is the Chinese in Africa. It is the Indians in Africa. It is now the Japanese in Africa. So we're going to have to stop our white man argument and jump to the Chinese and jump to the Japanese. I think we need to cut this all together and begin to say it is the black man. Because when the black man recognizes his power and his energy and harness our own resources, we can begin the journey to liberate ourselves and liberate our people everywhere. So we got to take this beyond talk, and we got to get proactive about our journey ahead. We got to begin to look at how we flip the script on everybody else and begin to do some new things. The richest black man in the world is in Ethiopia. The second richest black man, Nigeria. The third richest, Nigeria. The fourth richest, South Africa. The fifth richest, America. The sixth richest, Jamaica. The seventh richest is in Sudan. And there goes a list of wealthy billionaires, black billionaires in the world. This did not exist 20 years ago. 20 years ago, our energy was restricted. It didn't matter where you were. Folks would let us rise but so far and no further. But I thank God for freedom. Somebody say freedom. Because freedom is more about the mind than it is about the hands and the feet. Freedom is not so much about chains that binds as freedom is about the release of our mental faculties to recognize that we've got the power to do and to be all that God has ordained the black man to be. When we understand this, when we bind to this, when we begin to do some new stuff, our journey escalates to a whole nother level. So we must go back to these wealthy black folks across the globe and begin to ask them to buy into the agenda to help with the liberation and the freeing of our people. I know I said liberation because let me tell you something. If you think you are free in Bedford-Stuyvesant, when you are stopped at will, your children are stopped at will, you think you're free when your kids need summer jobs, they gotta go to somebody else to provide the job because you don't have the resources to provide it. If you think you are free when we are busy buying Chinese food and everybody else's food that is no good for us, if we think we are free when we sit back and allow 5 bodegas on a 4-corner block, all of them selling drugs open 24/7 to our children, if you think you are free.
That's right. No, you're right.
And in the end, we've got a board of education system that miseducate our children, and we've not provided enough to make sure that we can properly educate them on our own turf if we think we are free. We have to look at all the resources that's available to us, and we got to begin to do some new things. Secondly, after we have looked at harnessing all of this global power and economic energy amongst our people worldwide and begin to do something with it, secondly, we must create more businesses amongst ourselves and in our own community, and we must liberate ourselves from the mom and pop syndrome. Almost every black business in America is a mom and pop business. Our businesses start as mom and pop business and they die as mom and pop business. They never become sons and daughter businesses. They're always mom and pop businesses. Now, I need you to hear me on this. This is an important, philosophical lesson that you got to hear. Business must grow to the extent where the children want to take the businesses over. And when the children take the businesses over, they are no longer mom and pop. Now they are sons and daughters, and the sons and the daughters are able to take that which for mom and pop was but a dream and transform it into a vision. Now y'all got to understand this. This, as I said, may be a little philosophical, but let me break it down to you. Mom and Pop started this business with a dream and a vision and to do something and to build something. And they started and they struggle with it and struggle through. They oftentimes get us through college, and when they get us through college, most times sons and daughters watch Mom and Pop struggle so much that by the time they become old, they don't want to be a part of the struggles. We got to grow these businesses to the extent that there is something that we can bequeath to our sons and our daughters. They can take it and transform what was a mom and pop business into a growing concern. Now that they've got different intellectual ability and intellectual capacity, now that they have learned other skills and you've sent them off to college, do you notice that most times our young people do not come back home?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
I want you to think about that for a minute. The one community in America that suffers from brain drain than any other community in America are black communities. Because in the end, most times our young people, after we send them off to college, do not want to come back to the struggles that their mama and papa experienced back in Bedford-Stuyvesant. So they are lured to Wall Street, they are lured to Madison Avenue, they are lured to Broadway, they are lured to some other place other than Pitkins and Church Avenue and Main Street in the neighborhood. And once they get lured, they never come back. And so we've got all these brilliant minds that are headed up major organizations and running major corporations. They're bought on and brought on to themselves the philosophy of the major corporation, and you wonder why. After a while, we begin to see them as disconnected black men and black women because there's nothing to come back to Bedford-Stuyvesant and Harlem for. We must journey to the place in our experience where we see the need to do some new things and to move this agenda in a new direction. We must harness our resources now and our energy and begin to create more businesses. We must create networking opportunities and networking options. We must interface with each other. We must pool our monies and invest together. How long will we talk about we are one and we are in solidarity with each other when we're not pooling our resources to invest together? Thirdly, everybody say number 3. I'm going to end on number 3. I'm not going to keep it going. I'm going to just end on number 3 quickly. Number 3. Black institutions and churches and mosques and temples and synagogues must recognize that the mandate to bring freedom and economic freedom in particular to black folks in America is the responsibility and the charge of our faith and not-for-profit institutions. If you look through the channel of history, you will find that when the European church organized, their mission was to colonize Africa and the rest of the world. They had an orchestrated plan, and in the end, their commitment was to bring economic freedom and economic empowerment to Europe. And they succeeded. And so they used the synagogue. We all know that true Jews ain't white folks. I don't know. I don't care which book you want to read. There is no historic evidence that will ever prove to to you or show you anywhere that white, pure-blooded Caucasian are Jews, because it's not scriptural, it's not Talmudic, I don't know where it came from. But the fact of the matter is that it became an instrument. Judaism was an instrument that the European used to help bring about their economic freedom. At some point they took Islam and they did the same thing with Islam, and the one that they grab a hold of and held on to the longest and the most is Christianity. I dare any of you to challenge me. There's no evidence in scriptures that will ever prove that Europeans and white folks have anything to do with the development and the evolution of the scriptures. All they did was translate it.
That's all they did.
Translated.
Translated, I like that better. I'm simply making the point that what we've seen are a group of people who were eager to bring about their economic freedom, and in so doing they recognized how important religion was and how important the church was. It is us black folks who have used the church to bring about some level of civil rights. We have used the church to bring about some level of political power. It is about time that we understand that the core purpose of the church is to bring economic freedom to the people of God. It is time we begin to do that. And the same way, I end on this. The same way the Seventh-day Adventist Church harnessed their energies and resources, started a company called Kellogg's Cornflakes. And from Kellogg's Cornflakes, Post cereal. And from Kellogg's Cornflakes and Post cereal, they started Worthington and Loma Linda, and have created major corporate entity all across the globe. That is a church that will never go poor. Amen. Because they realized and saw the need to do that. The same way the Presbyterian Church right over there in Vineland, New Jersey, was able in their church basement to orchestrate and started Welch's Grape Juice and the Welch's Corporation. The same way we've seen only 50-something years ago, Reverend Sunyon Moon started this Unification Church, and from that church have built a massive empire. Manhattan Center, Hammerstein Ballroom, Intercontinental Hotel. I said Manhattan Center already, Mother Webb. Thank you so much. The long list of corporations, Washington Times and Telemundo newspaper and Mystic Beverage and Ginseng Beverage, and the list goes on. I mean, I could keep going. All of these are entities that were built by church organization. It is about time for the Nation of Islam. It is about time for the Progressive Baptist Convention. It is about time for the National Baptist. It is about time for the Church of God in Christ. It is about time for church organization to understand that we can't keep people empowered if all we're doing is having church all day long. We got to move from the pulpit, from the pews, and begin to create enterprises to liberate our community and liberate our people. I gotta say one other thing before I end. And this is, I wish all of you in here would be pro-Christians and pro-Muslims and pro-God, pro-righteousness, pro-God. I can't convince any of you to believe what you don't want to believe, but I have spent enough time to understand that there is a God that has created and has ordained all of us. And we got to take our fight in the right direction, because I believe that when there is a God consciousness, When God is foundational to the things that we do, then it will begin to spark the right kind of revolution that will bring about the righteous change that need to take place amongst us as a people. And it is time. It is time we harness our energy. It is time we begin to do some new stuff and move in new direction. And I dare you not to let this 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation go by without us harnessing our energy and say it is time for black folks in America to get busy about our freedom, not freedom by their standard, not freedom by the absence of chains, but freedom by the presence of chain stores. Freedom by the presence of high-rise buildings. Freedom by the presence of major corporations. Freedom by the presence of department stores. Freedom by our ability to educate and foster care our own children on our own turf in our own neighborhood because we've got the resources and the ability to do so. That is the kind of freedom that we must now journey for. So with all the battles that our ancestors have raged to bring about our freedom, all the struggles that they've endured to get us to where we are today, I dare you, I charge you, I challenge you to flip a new page. Flip a new page. Begin to think differently. Begin to understand what it is that we must do and why it is that we must do this now, because this is an urgent time. My brothers and sisters, I love you. I love all of us, God's people. But let me tell you something, we've got much work to be done.
Yes, sir.
With $1.2 trillion in buying power, 44 million of us against only 600 and something billion in Nigeria with almost 200 million of them. Nigeria is the 8th largest country in the world, and black people in America has twice the power as Nigeria. I don't know what else to say to us other than the fact that we got to do some new stuff. Some of you got to come and join this movement that we're on. I can't force you to do it. You need to join. Let's do this thing. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get to work. I'm looking for all of you to come on out tomorrow, 5 p.m. at Salem United Methodist Church. And I would that everybody get a copy of the Economic State of Black New York report before you leave. I pray God's blessing, God's peace upon you. Thank you so much. God